What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Today is going to be completely different, okay? I know you guys are usually expecting movie reviews, and to be honest, we haven't done that in a couple weeks, huh, Josh? We haven't done any movie reviews, but today we're going to do something special. We're going to go ahead and bring some doom and gloom into your guys' lives, and we're basically going to discuss comic book movies, the rise, the stability, and from my perspective, and maybe you guys out there as well, a decline in comic book movies. Are they going out like the westerns? Are they going out like sci-fi movies did once before? We're gonna find out today, right? We're gonna dig a little deeper.
For sure.
But before we go ahead and get started, we gotta give you guys the theme song. So without further ado, I'm your host JP. This is my co-host Josh.
Hey everyone.
And welcome back to another episode of the FilmBros podcast. All right, y'all. So, the rise and what I think, I don't think, okay, I'm not going to cap. Comic book movies have not yet fallen, but they are falling. A very slow fall, a very embarrassing fall. You know, one of those falls where you start tumbling and it's one of those slow falls. Like you're getting closer to the floor and you're just like, man, why didn't I hit the floor yet? You know what I mean? Maybe you do one of these where you kind of spread eagle and it look like Superman when when you hit the ground. I don't know. Where do you think comic books movies are at this point in time, in this juncture at least?
I think they're just on a steady decline. I don't know what it is. They used to dominate the box office, but now they're kind of doing average numbers, which is very insane to see. But I think it's on a steady decline for sure.
Especially like coming from the juggernauts, like obviously Marvel, right? Marvel, the biggest one that you can possibly ever think of to have done it in a steady stream. But in order to get to that point, to know how we got to that point, we got to start from the very beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And comic book movies were not very prevalent before. I think the first comic book movies we started, or actually not even movies, TV shows. We wound up getting TV shows in back in the 50s, the 40s, the 60s. We had a Batman TV show that had no words, an Avengers TV show. I know you guys seen those bootleg, little clips on Twitter where you see Captain America with a see-through shield and a biker helmet, and Iron Man's in that big clunky robot suit. The Hulk was another man, just with ripped jeans who was completely ripped out. He was that was actually I consider that to be kind of like movie magic genius type shit, because they didn't have CGI back then. So what was the next best thing? Get a bodybuilder who can fit into some heavy ripped jeans and fucking go ham. That was pretty smart. Now, I don't know if you ever seen any of these TV shows. I don't know. Maybe you're just too young, little whippersnapper.
I've never decided to go back and look at that other stuff. No.
Yeah, because we're looking deep back in the 1900s.
Yeah, no. Long ass time ago, apparently.
I know. I was born in the 1900s. Anyways, watching those back then, it was completely different. They weren't like today. You didn't need to be comic accurate. You didn't have to worry about, Twitter trolls. You know what I mean? Like, you put out something and, if people loved it, they loved it. If they hated it, they hated it. Mm-hmm. We fast forward just a little bit to the 70s, right?
Yeah.
Or actually maybe 1966, where we got our first Batman live action, at least, that talked, had color. We had Batman and Robin. This iteration of Batman was always kind of like whatever. We knew he was goofy. I never heard anybody say that he smiled too much.
Adam West.
Yeah.
Adam West Batman.
Iconic.
For sure.
Till this day. I don't know if you've seen that new animated one that they have put out for him.
I haven't, but I know it exists.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty decent. Very, very good callbacks. Then, we moved on to Superman, where we an actual Superman movie directed by Richard Donner. We got a sequel to it. We actually got a few sequels. Some may hate it, some may love it. Here's one trend that I always noticed, even since when we got these first couple of superhero movies, is that too many sequels. Too many sequels hurt the brand. And, you know, a lot of people say Superman 2 was a bad movie. But, you know, Warner Brothers had that, you know, that precedent to, you know, undercut directors. And eventually we got the Donner cut of it. And, you know, everybody unanimously cheered and said that one was a better cut.
Yeah.
But, you know, then we got to Superman 3 and everybody was just like, whoa. And then Superman 4 and they were just like, excuse me? And then, you know, we moved on to Superman Returns and people were just like, are you guys even trying to get this right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you think about sequels? At least in the comic book genre. Like, what do you think about the sequels?
I think I think they work as long as they're consistent and they continue to explore the character that it was once about. You know, kind of. Well, you got the Raimi trilogy, right? And then you got I think they were bias aside, I think they were the ones to do it best. And then
which ones?
The Raimi trilogy, and then you know, just to look at a few others. There's the Dark Knight trilogy.
You really with Spider-Man 3?
It's still wrapped up his character nicely, I think, even with its like flaws. Like it does best of what it can.
Okay.
Even with studio interference and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Dark Knight trilogy, you know, people say that the third one was bumpy, and you're like, well, yeah, but I mean, by the end of it, you're still like, okay, yeah, this is the conclusion of the character. So the steady decline is that either the first one sets the bar, the second one kind of blows it out the water. And then the third one is the steady decline. Not probably because it is the finishing act, and you're kind of like, well, where do we go from here? Since you pretty much nailed the second and first one, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So maybe that's what happened here. You know, with the Superman Returns, or not the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, where one was really good, two was like but that wasn't the original cut, so it shouldn't count. And then you get the original cut, and you're like, okay, yeah, this is better. And then the third and fourth would happen. I think by then, you struggle to keep the ideas fresh and like struggles for your character. Now, if you can do it, and cool, but I don't think we've gotten to the point where a fourth movie really does anyone justice. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, we got some news from, you know, Iger himself, who said like, hey, we're going to be looking into whether, you know, sequels are very necessary now that, you know, he saw that Quantumanium kind of flopped, that Thor Love and Thunder and all that. Sequels to me are always amazing, in my opinion. I think sequels need to happen to tell a story. I think the problem is with sequels is that a lot of the times these directors don't even know that there's sequels coming down the pipeline, if that makes sense. Now, nowadays, yes. Back then, no. You know what I mean? And this is just me coming off of, and this, you know, this is gonna kind of help you guys kind of understand how things evolved. But nowadays, it's completely different with sequels. Back then, Superman didn't know. Richard Donner didn't know Superman was getting a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
It was a one and done adventure. It was supposed to be, hey, put out a Superman movie. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what hurts Visions a lot, is where, you know, you get a movie, you get a sequel to that movie that you didn't even know was supposed to happen, and, you know, you tied it up with a bow in the first one, and somehow, some way, you got to unravel that knot, right? And you see that in a couple of movies today where they, you know, they basically undo what they did in the first one to basically stretch it out for the second one.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Mm-hmm. That's a bad play. Richard Donner, the second Superman, I can't really put my finger on why the theatrical cut was bogus. I to be honest, this movie came out way before me, so I only seen the Donner cut. I've never really seen that theatrical cut. I've always heard bad things about it and some, you know, edits or whatever. I think sequels don't hurt movies as long as they focus on moving the story forward. Yeah. If you have to take two steps back to undo what happened in the first movie, that's a big no-no.
Yeah.
If you gotta slow down the speed of this movie to try to tell me what happened in the retell me what happened in the first one, I think that also hurts it. I think rewatchability gets hurt as well when you have a bunch of sequels and a bunch of movies as well, which we'll, you know, obviously address a little bit later as well. But that's another concern that I have with sequels. I don't know if you ever catch yourself doing this. I know that I catch myself doing this a lot. When I want to watch a movie nowadays, I'm like, you know, I don't know. Let's just say Star Wars, right? Mm. I want to watch I want to watch Star Wars. My favorite movies are, let's say, I'm just throwing hypotheticals. Maybe say seven's my favorite one, and maybe third's my favorite one, right? I want to watch these, but have that full emotional weight to to put into these movies.
Yeah.
If you just go in there watching the first one, yeah, you still remember, but it's not fresh in your head, if that makes sense. And let's just talk about this from a regular viewership perspective. Somebody who never watched Star Wars a day in their life, but they watched The Force Awakens, and they're like, how the fuck did we get here? Well, you got to watch XYZ to get to that point. I ain't going to do all that. You know what I mean? So I think when it comes to that, sequels are a good but a bad thing as well, because you got to like deal with what happened before, but also, move on to the next one. And it's just a big can of worms, in my opinion, for Hollywood at least.
I think it depends on the franchise. You know what I mean? Because Star Wars is a whole ass saga. You know what I mean? Expanding a whole universe of spin-offs and shit. So you can't even watch, if you really want that emotion, you can't really watch just the live action stuff. You know what I mean? So I think if it's things where you're like, okay, this is a set trilogy, and you're not gonna. Well, I guess nowadays you don't really get that, but like, well, the best example would still be the Raimi trilogy or the Dark Knight trilogy, right? Because you're not expecting a spin-off of that. You just get 3 movies solid, 1, 2, and 3, and they do pretty well of just advancing the character all the way till its finale, depending on who you ask. And then I think if it just depends, because if you're going for longevity, that'll hurt for sure. But if you're doing 3 movies in the span of it took Sam Raimi 2001 or 02, 05, or no, 02, 04, 07. It took him like less than 10 years. So like I think it just depends on the longevity of how far you're willing to go before your story gets stale. Kind of like with I think the best example for this one would be Matt Reeves' Batman. He's trying to make it a saga. I don't know. We don't know what that entails, but we know it's 3 movies right off the gate, and then, now the Penguin show.
Spin-offs.
Yeah, see? So now in Hollywood, your thing is not just to make a trilogy, but to capitalize and make a cinematic universe.
Yeah. And one thing the superhero genre has done is expand that some more. Now I wouldn't say just the superhero genre. I want to say, if I could pinpoint it, I think it started from Star Wars. We're going to be bringing up Star Wars a lot in this conversation, because I think a lot of movies try to copy that formula. And me being a Star Wars fan and seeing how they were able to make that jump between, video games to live action and, TV, like they were able to tie things up in a knot. And nowadays that's the model. That's the standard. Though Lucasfilm is going through their own struggles, I mean, they still got it nailed down from a storytelling perspective, at least in my opinion. So we move on from the 1900s, right? And we get to the early 2000s, right? That's when, superhero movies started taking off. 1999, the first X-Men movie came out, right? Boom. Put it on the map. X2 came out. Boom. Heavy hitter. Then we got a spin-off, right?
Yeah.
And this is where, Hollywood kind of, in my opinion, shot themselves in the foot, because now we got spin-offs, prequels, requels, reboots, whatever, rehashings. It doesn't matter. We had our high highs and we had our low lows in the early 2000s. We had great movies like X2. We had bad movies like X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Damn.
We had, Avengers, MCU, when it was the birth of MCU back in 08. We had high highs with Iron Man. Had some low lows with Thor 2. You know what I mean? So it's it was a bumpy road, right? And the longevity and the longevity of comic book movies in general. Not necessarily the MCU, not necessarily the Fox, just, them taking a stab at it, missing, but still saying, you know what, we're not done making these movies. We're going to make you a better one, right?
Yeah.
And we got X3, The Last Stand. It is what it is. Yeah. But what makes a good comic book movie to you?
Damn, that's a good question. I don't know. I think keeping what I think. Oh man, that's tough. Actually, that is a really good question.
Okay. I'll let you think, and I'll give you my interpretation. Okay. So, a good comic book movie to me would have to be a movie that literally, if I just want to break it down for you guys, and it might make me sound dumb or whatever, but a good comic book movie starts with a good movie, in my opinion. You tell a good story, a compelling story, and you get emotional weight out of it. You get, you know, the struggles that you can relate to, right?
Yeah.
And then you add that superhero spin to it. I know a lot of people say like, Man of Steel's an offender, because Superman's supposed to be this hyper, dorky, jumpy, you know what I mean? A lot of people said like if they would have showed Superman being a little bit more relatable in Man of Steel, it would have been received well. Shaving his face with laser eyes, or doing whatever he needs to do when and to me, I can see that point. Having some kind of relatable factor. They made him relatable in a different way, but some people want it more blatant in that way. That's why I use that example. But I'm not saying Man of Steel was badly written at all. But I think a good comic book movie, you should be able to feel for your person, feel like this can actually happen to me, while having that superhero spin to it, if that makes sense.
I think that's a good way to put it, because now that I think about it, my favorite comic book films have that element. It's a movie first. You feel for your character and things like that, like you can relate, and then what makes them the hero, the super to the hero, is that they're able to get back up and save the day and do whatever, save the girl, whatever. In Spider-Man 2 or Man of Steel, like you just said, like I think that also makes a good comic book movie. It's just getting your character, making them relatable for the audience, and then going from there. Don't try to, like, I guess the best way to put it is Thor. You know what I mean? We can't relate to being a god or whatever. So in that movie, when he takes away the hammer, Odin, and he's like, oh, you're not worthy anymore, this and that. So now he's stuck on Earth, and he's like, damn, I'm not worthy. So now, not saying that most people can relate to that, but now he's a regular guy. Like we can relate to, oh shit, we really do like coffee, give me another mug. Not smashing it, but like simple things like that. And then I know nowadays people will be like, oh, it has to be comic accurate, this and that, and I'm like, comic accurate in a sense is like, I think the only things that should matter are either the villains, the costumes, and some of the stories you're telling, because I know they like to implement the stories in a certain way. Like I think because how BVS was a mashup of like 5 different comic book stories. So I think from a storytelling perspective, it has to do with what you were saying, and then the comic stuff does come after the fact.
After the movie aspect.
Yeah.
We got to a point where now we're even getting bad comic book movies, right?
Oh my god.
Or we got to a point where we had the best comic book movies and we had some really bad comic book movies. Like I said, I named a couple: Last Stand, X-Men Origins. If you want me to not shit on outside MCU stuff, well, you got Thor 2, Captain Marvel, for people that say that they don't like it. There's a lot to unpack when it comes down to superhero movies, in my opinion, because like how you said in the beginning, or how you told me before, they used to be like these juggernauts, right? They used to they dominated box offices for the longest time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like, or I guess from watching how it was steadily doing numbers, I guess the MCU, right?
Yeah.
I can't really say for it. You know what? And even then, I feel like the success of the MCU actually bumped up the Fox movies as well. X-Men, because when they did their little reboot and brought back First Class and Days of Futures Past, it kind of gave it a little surge of life, and I think they were even hitting the million, almost close to a billion mark.
Yeah, because comic movies were just on a rise. You know what I mean? And then well, people were too young to remember the first X-Men movies. You know what I mean? Like I grew up with those ones, and then I think when they started doing that little soft reboot with Days of Future Past, they were like, damn, we gotta make this movie good, and we gotta kind of eliminate our past. You know what I mean? So what's the best way they do it? They get a younger, fresh cast: James McAvoy, Fassbender. What's his name? I can't remember his full name, but Fassbender. And then you gotta reintroduce these mutants, new storylines and whatnot, reset the timeline because now our actors are low key getting too old, and we want to wash the bad taste from our mouth, and then that leaves the whole branch timeline, and then somewhere down the line you get Logan, but Wolverine was the main one to stay because they were able to explain that properly. You're not kind of like, what the fuck is he doing here? They explained it why he's there.
I mean, continuity within the Fox universe has never really. If you want to be real, 10 years have passed from Days of Futures Past to Dark Phoenix, or from Dark Phoenix to or what was the last one? Apocalypse Dark Phoenix. Only 10 years had passed, and they're already they were supposed to be old men by then. They were supposed to be like in their 50s, and they still look like they were in their 30s or 20s.
That reset timeline does things for your skin, man.
Yeah, man. I don't know. But I guess at this juncture, because comic book movies reached their highs with the MCU, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think it went wrong? What was the comic book movie that changed comic book movies for the worst?
Damn.
You know what? Let's be a little optimistic. What changed it for the better?
For the better?
First.
Okay, so if we're really setting the bar, then I'm gonna take it back to the 2000s. The ones that set the bar would be the first X-Men and Spider-Man. You know what I mean? Because right after that, you got their trilogies, and then you got 2003 Hulk. You know what I mean? And then you got the Punisher, and Blade was still around by that time.
Some can argue those were bad movies.
What? Blade?
Not Blade, but like the Hulk 2003.
I found out,
to be fair, that was the bumpy part, right? That was when they were testing, trying and
they were throwing
shitting.
pasta at the wall.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully something sticks, right?
Yeah, and then we got the Ghost Rider movies. We got the first one, and then the second one, and then the Fantastic Four movies. Things that they said that they were supposed to be interconnected way back when.
Mm-hmm.
They set the pace though. X-Men, Blade, and Spider-Man. Blade set it for being the first R-rated Marvel movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they were like, we can make this PG-13 and actual like comic book stuff. So that's why Spider-Man reads just like the old Ditko comics and whatnot. What set the bar and changed things was the Batman Begins, because that's when DC and the Hollywood was like, oh shit, they like grounded, gritty stories. They want realism, while also sticking to that comic book element. So then the Batman Begins. And then you get the bar with Iron Man. That sets the wave for the MCU and the whole cinematic formula. And then, the Dark Knight sets the bar again. You're like, damn, Heath Ledger's Joker. The story in this one is great. But I think the one that really changed things would have had been Batman Begins. Because before that, we had Superman Returns. That campy Superman movie that people didn't like, which I enjoy that one for what it is. But I can admit, that one was trying to be something a little that it couldn't be. And so what set the bar was, again, just Batman Begins, and then after that, the rest is history.
I see you, but I'll double down and say that it started with X2. I would say X2 was the one that changed comic book movies' trajectory for the better. I know some people argue whether X1 or X2 or, which one's superior, but I feel like X2 kind of set that standard where you can show off that comic book accuracy while also telling a good story, and not having that light campy side, but also getting down to the nitty gritty when necessary. And I think I do think Christopher Nolan's trilogy did wonders for DC for themselves, or maybe shot themselves in the foot. Who knows? Because I think Warner Brothers saw that and was like, oh, they want gritty shit. They don't want that happy-go-lucky MCU shit. And then Zack Snyder came in, and then they were like, whoa, too dark,
a little too gritty.
a little, you got a little grittier. So I think what really set that precedent is, I would have to say X2. I guess looking back, because when that movie came out, the opening act was crazy, and a lot of people couldn't even believe that they were like just killing people left and right in the beginning. You know what I mean? And I think that's why a lot of the times Fox doesn't get enough credit. They put out a lot of superhero movies. Fantastic Four, you said Ghost Rider, all of them. They put out a lot of superhero movies that, you know, maybe some people didn't like, unfortunately. But I think they set a precedent with the Fox movies, at least.
You know, they did what they could, you know, because they had a lot of good like characters and IPs stacked with them.
And you got to think too, Marvel cut them at the knees too, because when they had the rights, they were like, well, we're not making any more comic book movies about the X-Men, or I mean, any more comic books about X-Men or Fantastic Four or Ghost Rider. So they were just basically, well, whatever they had is what they had, you know what I mean? And they tried to make movies out of that.
Yeah. See, so they were, that kind of sets the bar, because again, I know we've talked about it a few times, and it's interesting to just keep bringing it up, because what characters do you make famous after, you know, you don't own those characters? You know, Universal owned Hulk, and you know he owns Namor and all the Hulk things, so that means no Red Hulk, no She-Hulk, whatever. Fox owned the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Ghost Rider, shit like that. And then Sony owns Spider-Man. And so what characters do you bring? Characters that you know, people don't really know. We've seen them in cartoons. We've seen them in the old animated Spider-Man movies. You know, Iron Man got that cartoon on Nickelodeon that when he was a teenager or whatever. Who do you make famous? So they were like, well, this is who we got. We got Iron Man, Captain America, Thor. We got the Avengers. Let's make those guys mainstream. And then boom, the first Iron Man, or 2008. Around the time the Dark Knight comes out. And then, you know, Iron Man 2 sets the bar, and move on, so on and so forth. But it was an interesting time because no one knew who Iron Man was. The main ones, from what I remember, every time you looked and saw comic book stuff, Spider-Man, Hulk, or Wolverine. You know what I mean? Now it's Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor.
Yeah, they made him a household name.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that transition, because they were not by any means famous at the time.
Nobody cared for comic books. That's the sad reality of it. When they became movie, well, it's kind of with anything. I mean, I'm not gonna read hella books, but I'll watch a movie that's made out of a book. I tell you. So with that, since we established what basically set the precedent for comic book movies, where do you think comic book movies went wrong? And you're gonna love my answer.
I don't know, man, because there's so many things wrong. I think when they just started over flooding the market, if that makes sense.
Okay, let's not go into financials or box office, because we're gonna get to that in a little bit.
Okay.
Let's talk about what they did within the movies. That probably, you know, that at first probably they were like, oh, this is a good idea, but then, you know, after you reusing that same formula to try to prop more money, it kind of just, it felt like it hurts the movies. And I got two.
I'm not too sure. I can't really pinpoint it from a movie perspective. So
no?
let me hear what you got.
Okay. So
give me an idea.
Where I think movies and comic book movies got hurt was, it's gonna make me sound like a hater, but I swear to God I'm not. Guardians of the Galaxy 1, because of James Gunn, and because of Deadpool. Those are the two where I say, though I love the movies, I could honestly say they fucked up the genre. And I say that because, well, let's start with Guardians of the Galaxy. That was the first, in my opinion, Marvel movie. I mean, Marvel always sprinkled in humor, right? I always felt like it was like mature humor, though. You know, in Iron Man, Thor, Iron Man 2, like, it was subtle stuff, and it wasn't, you never need to have a quip right afterwards, unless you were Spider-Man or something, you know what I mean? And I think after Guardians of the Galaxy 2, you know, that's where, you know, you punch somebody and there was something at the end of it. You know, you couldn't hold on to that emotional weight because there was always something funny behind it in Guardians of the Galaxy. The ending of Guardians of the Galaxy, couldn't even take it seriously for the third act. They had a dance-off, right? Like, it had that Marvel formula where they were trying to take itself seriously, but it was made to look and act goofy for the general audiences because, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy was fairly new and they wanted people to have a laugh, not really come in and take these people seriously.
Yeah,
Now
yeah.
they're at their third movie, and now people can take them seriously. That's growth. That makes sense. But I think when that movie came out, I think that's where it set that weird Hollywood thing where you needed to have that quip or be fucking funny every single time and never hold down that emotional weight, because if it's too emotional, it's too gritty for you, and the audience is not gonna like that.
Yeah.
And Deadpool 1, though, like I said, I love Ryan Reynolds. I love Deadpool. Great movie. Ryan Reynolds is amazing. I love everything about it. The thing is that with Deadpool, what happened is that it turned that needing to have that comedy up until to 100, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it works in a movie like Deadpool. But I think the problem is that now producers are like, it worked for them, it could work for us. And that's where it tripped it up, because I mean, now you're seeing Warner Brothers dive heavy with that, with the Suicide Squad, with the reshoots that they had, the new Suicide Squad with James Gunn, obviously bringing over that formula that I told you from Guardians and stuff, whatever. Birds of Prey did the same thing. They tried to act the same way.
Yeah.
And maybe that's WB being reactionary, but I honestly believe like they those movies, though they're great, they're banana peels, in my opinion. They're hidden banana peels, and they're going to walk past it thinking, oh, they're going to get something good, but not every movie can use that formula. And I think since they've seen that that's what attracts general audiences and it makes billions of dollars, and people love quips and being entertained that way, I think it hurt comic book movies, because now they feel like they have to have that humor. And like we talked about Morbius was supposed to be this serious, I thought from the trailers it was supposed to be this serious doctor trying to find a cure, battling with his demons type shit, and we just got a vampire that made stupid ass jokes. And for what? Sorry, Jared Leto. I love Jared Leto. I know a lot of people hate him, but that movie with the reshoots and the different tone that it had to go through and everything, like, you can tell that movie was botched, and
goddamn,
they should have did something different. But that's kind of where I see where comic book movies kind of like took a dip for the worst, and now we're kind of where we're at.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess if that's the case, it would be when that would probably set the mark, because I think around that time, was that 2014?
Yeah, 2014.
Yeah.
And Deadpool came out like in 2016.
Yeah, see, so around that area is when they just stopped taking themselves seriously. You know what I mean?
Age of Ultron was an offender of that as well, because even though Avengers had humor, it was mature humor, and then in Age of Ultron, it just got, though it had its good moments, it just got too goofy sometimes.
Yeah, no. There's and I think that just comes from Joss Whedon's writing. You know what I mean?
Well, not just that, but like the need for the formula to be there.
Well, no,
with Marvel.
It's because you mentioned the first one, and I'm like, well, that's kind of how he writes. He thinks his comedy just doesn't stick very well in general.
Well, the first Avengers, I thought he did pretty well with. The second one was the one where I feel like it was that adjustment to balance out whatever dark tone he was trying to put in there, and it was like, I get Marvel, and I get them saying like, oh, Guardians of the Galaxy, because Guardians of the Galaxy came out a year before Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
And they were like, that's funny, that people love that shit. Imagine if we apply that to heroes that they know, that's going to make a difference. And I think that's what basically happened. I know you look at Justice League, and you're like, that's Whedon's handwriting, but you got to understand that he had to overwrite and overlap and connect dots that weren't his dots, if that makes sense. So he, with the first two Avengers, I can't even say he did bad. I just think the Age of Ultron is where, Fahi was like, nope, you got to insert shit where people are going to be laughing and shit,
Yeah, because he did have a lot of unnecessary jokes. But yeah, I guess that makes sense. A lot of these movies stopped really taking themselves seriously, and I don't know if it's really hard to pinpoint reasons why. You know, it could be just the writing, or the studios thinking, like you said, like, oh, this is funny. Let's see if the fans react properly, or if it's like a director's thing, because we did get it with Thor: Love and Thunder, and it's just hard to tell who's really doing it. You know what I mean? Because not every movie's done by the same director, but every movie has that same formula.
Within the MCU.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's very weird to pinpoint it.
Yeah. So since we kind of talked about the highs, Avengers hitting $1 billion, Infinity War hitting $1 billion, No Way Home almost cracking that, or No Way Home cracking that, Far From Home having a tough time cracking it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Ant-Man and the Wasp 2 did pretty good. Like, we got to a time where Marvel movies were a surefire thing. And I talked to you about this where when we went to a Marvel movie, you were going to have a good time, if that makes sense. I knew I was going to have a good time. Yeah. I knew I never had to worry with a Marvel product because I just knew that they never miss.
Mm-hmm.
They never missed. And, then I sat through Black Widow and I was like, okay, well, I blamed it on COVID. I said, hey, COVID happened. It is what it is. They had to make adjustments where adjustments were needed. VFX artists, I gave them the excuse. And then what was after that? Multiverse of Madness. I was like, wow, okay. Though I did like some of it, I did hear about the behind the scenes that happened, and I was like, oh, it is what it is. And then Love and Thunder came out, and Eternals 2, and
oh my goodness,
and a few of them. And just so you guys don't think I'm shitting on the MCU, DC did some egregious shit too. Wonder Woman 84, Black Adam. I won't say Shazam because that's just too easy, but like Morbius, obviously that's another one, right? We got to a point where movies just aren't doing so well right now, and that's where we hit. We're hitting our decline right now. That bridge between Infinity War, let's say Civil War, I think, or Age of Ultron. Let's say Age of Ultron because I think that's when it was steadily doing numbers. Let's say Age of Ultron. Now we're at the point where, they're trying to balance it out. And like I said, like Star Wars, trying to jump from medium to medium, TV shows, video games, whatever. They're trying to dip into different things now.
Yeah.
But they're not getting the results that they wanted,
mm-hmm.
or what they're hoping for. Do you think that comic book movies, around the time when they're in their highs, right? The Infinity War type shit.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit in the tail end after that, even though the movies were bad. Do you think that they dominated the box office so much that it hurt regular movies?
Well, yeah, for sure. Because they were new, they were fresh. People were just like, man, like these movies are bread and butter. It made it hard for other movies to shine. Of course, like I can't even give you a list of them because there's been quite a bit, and I think to put that into perspective, because now we this year we have so many comic book movies coming out, bro. But you know what people are excited for? Barbie and Oppenheimer. Just to put that into perspective, because way back when, I can imagine. Well, okay, maybe not Oppenheimer, but Barbie. There would not have been this much hype around it way back when, if it was around the time when.
Yeah, Nolan has hype.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe not Oppenheimer. He wouldn't be an offender, but Barbie, like people would not be this hyped if it was coming out way back when, when superhero movies.
Well, actually,
dominated.
last year, because even last year, people were still taking a chance on comic book movies, and I think, yeah, they did dominate it to the point where a lot of people were scared to go up against a Marvel movie. I know Shazam shuffled a bunch of times. I know. A couple DC movies. I think when BVS was coming out, they didn't want to go up against Civil War, so they kind of moved to a different block altogether, so they didn't have to compete. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why compete when you can have two comic book movies, one in the beginning, one at the end, who heroes can fight each other? I think they did dominate for a while, and I think it started making it abundantly clear when they started failing, if that made sense. Because when they started failing, you were like, why were they dominating the box office? And look at all these movies that we skipped out on or probably missed out on or whatever. You know what I mean? Babylon missed out because of I think Love and Thunder. and it wound up being garbage. And now I think people are to the point where, like, why take a chance on Marvel when I could take a chance on an exact same movie and probably be happier with this movie than this one?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of factors into why we're on this decline, and I think this is going to be I think this section is going to be the bulkiest for the listeners out there. The bulkiest and the most controversial. And so if you guys get triggered easily, I suggest you don't do that, because we're just having a conversation. We're laying down the facts, and if you don't like the facts, well, I am so sorry. Facts are facts.
For real.
So we're at this tail end, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, where people would rather take a chance on Barbie than probably take a chance on, Guardians of the Galaxy, whatever. Guardians of the Galaxy 3, like I said, it sounds like it had growth. A lot of people are coming out loving it. Is it making the money that it's supposed to? Not really. No. I think it made like about close to 120 million on its first weekend.
Yeah.
Way lower than Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Mm-hmm.
Thor: Love and Thunder. Actually, Thor: Love and Thunder had a good opening. It was the decline after that had a problem. So Multiverse of Madness, same thing. I think those movies were the ones where people were kind of checking out, and Quantumanium was the one where people just said, "We're tired."
What the fuck, bro?
Yeah, we're tired. Let's start with. I know we talked about sequels and stuff, but does continuity hurt movies? MCU, DCU, Star Wars, it doesn't even matter. Like, does continuity hurt these movies?
It's a bit of half and half. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because for the experience, you want to, like you said, you want that element. You want the emotional stuff. Like, you want to be there when you want to see the beginning of Iron Man to when he dies. You know what I mean? You want to see Captain America, Thor, this, and that. What makes it difficult is giving them movies in between that sometimes, because it was probably simpler way back when, before 2012, or when they started branching out to Guardians and all that, to all these characters, because you only had to worry about 6 characters, Even then, Black Widow didn't show up till Iron Man 2. So you don't really need to give her a solo movie because she was in Iron Man 2. All you really need to know is she's a spy for Nick Fury, and so on and so forth.
I think if they were gonna give her a solo movie, it's way overdue. They shouldn't have done it after she dies. That was stupid.
Yeah, well, yeah, and even then, making it about the spy stuff, that should have been a Clint and Black Widow movie, I think. But that's besides the point. I think that sort of draws the line, because now you're like, damn. Like, yeah, we want to see more of this character, but not if it's in shit like Love and Thunder, It's...
I don't want to see it in a pile of dog shit.
That's what hurts the longevity of it, because now you're like, damn, I really want to see the MCU, but, like you said, I don't want to sit through the first 2 Thor movies, I don't want to sit through things that I don't really want to sit through,
Mm-hmm.
Especially for characters that haven't been around too long, Like you watch, say you're watching, like you said, the Infinity Saga, and you're like, but I don't want to sit through Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I don't want to sit through Captain Marvel, don't want to sit through the first 2 Thor movies, Love and Thunder, like things like that. That's what hurts it, I think. When your solo movies start declining and your spin-offs start declining, that makes longevity hard, because now it's not, you're basically putting yourself through hell just so you can get that conclusion. But some of these characters weren't even around, That's what hurts it, I think.
Yeah. I get you. Within the movie aspect, yes, I think you make sense with that. I guess within general audiences and people who go and watch the movie, I think continuity hurts. I think continuity hurts them, and I especially box office numbers, because there's people who never seen a Marvel movie that probably wants to jump in and watch Guardians of the Galaxy 3, let's say, but they missed the first 2, and I missed 1 and 2, but now I hear that they're also in Infinity War, so I gotta watch that. And then I also hear they're in Endgame, so I gotta watch that, and I gotta watch that shit movie Love and Thunder. Like it's like, why is there so much stuff that I have to watch in order to catch up to these movies? You know what I mean? A lot like people get intimidated, and it's not just sequels. I think it's continuity. I think if like sequels, what's a good example? Ghost Rider. Ghost Riders. They made 2 Ghost Rider movies, completely different stories both times, right? They said the fuck's continuity, and they just threw that shit out the window, right? And they were like, what happened in the second one did not happen in the first one, and they look completely different. I know a lot of people don't like the Ghost Rider movies. I personally enjoyed both of them, and it's because it's just mindless shit that you can just watch. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to watch the first one to watch the second one. If I just wanted to watch, if by some weird way I feel like, oh, I want us to watch Spirit of Vengeance, just I'm drunk or something, just one day I just want to watch Spirit of Vengeance, I'm like, I could just watch that one. I don't have to watch the first one. I could just watch that one. You know what I mean? And so, and then when I don't know if it happens to you, but there's times where I go to be like, hey, I want to watch this movie, and I'm like, damn, but I gotta watch these ones too. It's like, can I just watch this one movie? You know what I mean?
That's why. Some things just struggle for that, and I think in the MCU sense and thinking about it as a franchise, it hurts, But if you're watching a trilogy, like a normal trilogy, so Raimi trilogy, The Dark Knight, it doesn't really hurt, I think there's a big difference between franchises like the MCU and then a smaller movie just getting 3 parts, because again, now you're worrying about longevity and projects you really don't want to watch. Like, take the Raimi trilogy again. You get the first one, very good story. It ends with him choosing to be the hero. He can't have the love of his life, whatever.
That's 3 movies. Easy. People can go through that easy. That's easy. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about Nolan's trilogy. Nobody cares about a trilogy movie. Those ones are easy to comprehend. You can easily go through 3 movies. That one's super easy. I'm talking about continuity, bro. Like Fox movies continuity. Like Harry Potter continuity. You know what I mean? 7 movies in, 8 movies in. Fast and the Furious. You know what I mean? A lot of movies are doing that where they want these cinematic universes. And it's great. It's cool that we get to see our characters continue to live on past the first movie, because sometimes they just kind of disappear and go somewhere else. It's good to see this longevity happen, but is the longevity the problem? Should we just maybe get a trilogy, maybe with these characters? Let's say we get an Avengers trilogy. Boom, boom, boom. Reboot it. Let's put another Avengers trilogy, but with a different set of Avengers. You know what I'm saying? Boom. Easy to maintain. You got blocks or whatever. I guess the best way I can put it, and I think it works good, and it's just because it's a TV show, but like how Andor does it, right? They made a whole season, but basically every 3 episodes is basically a storyline. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it connects, and then you go on to the next one. You don't know. They kind of explain how much time passes in between now, afterwards. They should have done it during the show, but like, you get some time pass or whatever, and then boom, you get another 3 episodes to show the arc. You know what I mean? And I think that's a perfect set. 3 is a perfect set. I think 3 is what most people can handle. Because, if you can have a conclusion by the end of that one, kind of like, and I know the MCU is doing the same thing and just basically stretching it out, Avengers, and then you got the little pocket spin-off movies or one-offs or whatever that are supposed to connect to the next Avengers. It's like, I would just like to watch Avengers 1, 2, Infinity War. But, if you don't watch these ones, you don't know how they ended up here. You know what I mean? It's a big, I think that's a big deal for movies, at least for the box office. And, maybe they might give it a chance, but they're going to wait till streaming. Why would I want to go watch Guardians of the Galaxy 3 in theaters when I could just watch every single one of them? By the time I'm done watching every single one of them, it's on streaming. I could just watch it on streaming.
I think that's a lot of word of mouth at that point. Like, it'd be like say I don't know shit and I decide, damn, I want to go watch Guardians. I think at that point I'd have to go out of my way to watch the first 2,
or ask somebody who watched it,
or somebody who watched it and be like, hey, do I gotta watch the first 2? And I'd be like, if they're like, yeah, I'd be like, all right. because I mean, you don't really have to watch Love and Thunder to be like, hey, this is where they're at. We just know that they were in it for just the beginning. They ditched Thor, and that's about it. Like, I can be told that, and this is where they are now. Not all movies are gonna give you a recap, which, like I said, they should do. They should just market that shit and be like, hey, kind of like a Star Wars scroll. Boom, boom, boom. This is where we're at. Kind of like how they kind of did in Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance, where they recap the first movie, and he's like, I got my powers, and now I live a lonely life of solitude or whatever, trying to be a religious man and whatnot. Like a quick.
Are you giving praises to Love and Thunder right now?
What? No.
Oh,
I was talking about Spirit of Vengeance.
Oh, my bad. Yeah.
I was giving flowers to Spirit of Vengeance.
Okay.
But like things like that would really help the general audience kind of catch up, and then that's when if
we're gonna start seeing little recaps, and you're gonna have people try to skip recap.
Like a Netflix show. That's funny.
In the theater.
But like, yeah, no, I think I see your point though. Longevity hurts, but that's what I was saying. Like starting a movie and being like, hey, this is fresh and new and whatnot. That's where I was going with Spider-Man 2, because it follows the first one, but at the same time, it's still fresh and new for the general audience to be like, okay, what happened in the first one? So I can go back and check that out because it's fresh. You know, all you really need to know watching Spider-Man 2 is that Harry's father died. He blames Spider-Man. Why does he blame Spider-Man? Go watch the first one after the fact. Like, I think that's what keeps general audiences kind of fresh and bringing new fans in as well.
Yeah.
And then, as far as the MCU goes, that shit is a lost boat. You got to be like, you got to pick a movie. And at that point, if you're like, oh shit, I want to see what happens after and before, then you go from there. But honestly, yeah.
I think the dude from Transformers puts it well. The crazy CIA agent, where he's like, hey, stay with me. Beginning, middle, end, facts. Give it to me. You know what I mean? And I think that's how people want it. I think 3 movies is perfect because you can have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I think continuity within 7, 8, 9, 10 movies, it becomes a jumbled up mess.
I think that's because.
Wait, go ahead.
Well, they're trying to set up, a larger story outside of that.
Ruin my segue.
I think say you decided to watch just the 3 Captain America movies. They're pretty standard, But the first one, how he's made, his origin and whatnot. The second one, we know he's trying to adjust into living in the world and, this and that while also being Captain America. By the third one, you're like, I remember that guy from the first one, or the second one, the dude that tries that Crossbones. And you're like, okay. But now you have Wanda in play. And you're like, oh, she's a new person. Civil War is basically an Avengers film,
Yeah, but I think, to be honest, since you bring it up, I think Captain America did it best. I think that's the movies that did it best because we didn't see him jump from movie to movie, right? We just seen him in his movies, right? Yeah. And in the Avengers ones, where you had Iron Man in every single which way, and you have Guardians of the Galaxy now and separating themselves as well into different movies as well. I think that's where it becomes confusing with that continuity where, whereas Captain America, you had him in the first one, you saw him in Avengers, saw him in Winter Soldier, saw him in Civil War, and then Infinity War Endgame. Yeah.
Closed. So you can watch them standalone. If you want the bigger story, that becomes a problem. Like you couldn't watch the Ant-Man movies, by themselves, I feel. Because the first one, yeah, you can watch it. New story, fresh, origin, whatnot. The second one, Ant-Man and the Wasp, filler. They get stuck in the quantum realm. And you're like, damn, I want to know what happens next. But they don't tell you that in the third one. They're just out of it. And you're like, well, fuck.
Well, you gotta watch Infinity War.
What I miss? And then they're like, oh, well, you gotta watch Endgame. Because he wasn't in Infinity War.
So continuity is a big deal.
That would be the difference between Captain America and the Ant-Man movies.
Yeah.
Because the longevity that you're talking about affects that. Because they didn't pick up where the last one lasted. They picked up after Endgame. A real fan would be like, hey, we gotta watch Endgame. A casual would be like, oh, I just want to watch the first 3. But then you get to Thor and you're like, well, what the fuck? How'd they get out? who the fuck is Kang? You know, like,
Yeah.
like
Where did this
like
guy
that.
come from?
Like
I
shit
thought it
like
was
that.
Thanos.
Yeah, no, shit like that. So it becomes a problem between, where you're watching it. Because I think the Iron Man trilogy, does pretty well. I don't really like the Thor movies.
Ant-Man trilogy does pretty well. I think a lot of people agree it's kind of like the weakest link.
What, Iron Man?
Oh, I thought you said Ant-Man.
No, Iron Man.
Iron Man, yeah.
Iron Man does well because, Origin.
Hmm.
You see him struggle with the second one. By the third one, they cover the events of the Avengers. We just got to know that he has PTSD. He's trying to struggle from that.
Yeah.
It keeps him up at night.
They at least make that effort to push for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And then by the third one, you're like, he gave it up on his own.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of that story alone is fine. Age of Ultron kind of fucks that up, but whatever.
Yeah.
And then I don't like the Thor movies. We just talked about Captain America movies. The Spider-Man movies tried it. I don't, how I feel about those without getting too deep. But moving on, I guess, because you got a different way of going.
But yeah, so continuity is a big deal. Now we're getting to the point where and we heard Marvel say it. They wanted to, they wanted to be like Star Wars, right? That's the model. You heard James Gunn say it over there at DC too. Star Wars is the model.
Yeah.
Seamless transition. Movies, TV shows, video games, different mediums, whatever, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing Marvel do that right now, right? Oversaturating the market, putting out Disney Plus shows, movies at the same time.
Yeah.
Four series in a year, 4 movies in a year. Got to the point where Iger's like, whoa, now we gotta step back. Do you feel like they overdid it too much with as much content as they were putting out, or were you just like, gimme?
Oh no, there was a point where I told you there was always been a point where I was kind of like, damn, this is a lot. I think the ramp up to Infinity War and Endgame was when you were like, oh yeah, because I want to know the next fucking thing.
Yeah,
that's when you were like, okay. And then after Endgame, I was kind of like, okay, where do they take this? And, got WandaVision. I did like WandaVision. Got some of the shows hit or miss. And you're like, damn, when's the next movie? Because now they're only putting out shows. And the next movie was Black Widow. And you're like, damn, this wasn't what I was expecting at all. And you know how I feel. On the opposite side, you know how I feel about Wonder Woman 84 and the Suicide Squad. Before that, Birds of Prey was kind of whatever, so on and so forth. But back to the MCU, because they've been more consistent, I guess, in the box office terms.
Well, Black Widow, oversaturation wise, I would say all comic book movies, but I think MCU is the worst offender.
Well, yeah, because they were pumping out 4 movies a year, 3 movies a year,
and because of collateral damage, DC and obviously other superhero. I mean, we don't have to worry about Fox anymore because Disney, bought them out, but. At the time, it was Fox, Disney, and DC, and whatever little pockets of superhero movies that were coming out, to fill, Hancock, whatever, to fill up those. Sony doesn't have a lot of Superman movies, so hey, let's make Hancock type shit,
That makes me think of, like, what that movie could have been if it just did so well.
What?
Hancock. Like, I think I know.
Imagine the franchise it would have had.
For real. Yeah. I really like that. The whole aspect of, like, gods and stuff. I know this isn't about Hancock entirely, but thinking about his movie and his stuff, like I think Will Smith did say he never wanted to do a sequel, but man, I think if that movie would have done numbers, we would have gotten those fucking movies.
Yeah, but I think it ended perfectly too.
Yeah, for sure.
It was still a beautiful movie. I think the ending's great. Yeah. Moving on, but still, yeah.
Back to what we were talking about. Sorry,
little tangent. So what was I? Oh yeah. No. Oh yeah. So oversaturation. Obviously, collateral damage is DC right now, and Amazon Prime is putting out their own superhero shows. The Boys, stuff like that. So we have an overabundance of superhero genre
wherever
stuff.
You turn, yeah.
So now we're at the point where, like how we told you, and how we kind of were talking about it in the beginning. There was a point where it was all westerns. There was a point where it was all sci-fi, and shit just slowly declined after.
Mm-hmm.
Are we at that point? Are we at that oversaturation point where we're shitting the bed before it slowly goes away?
Not yet. I don't think so. Not yet. It just, some of it has to remain fresh, because think about it. Think about what you just said, right? The movies aren't doing too hot, but the shows are still thriving, So there is a demand for superhero stuff. It just, maybe it's because it's rated R and we haven't gotten that taste before other than Deadpool. You know,
Mm-hmm.
The Boys, bloody and gory. Invincible, bloody and gory. Um, you got some shows on Disney Plus where you're just like, man, like this is very Disneyfied, Disney's like Marvel stuff, like that Spider-Man show I told you about, and then no, like I think if like on the cartoon and show aspect, like if you really want to hold that together, you gotta do more than just kid stuff. I think that's why people liked the Netflix shows a lot more because you had that emotion and adult themes, and you're kind of like, damn, like the movies and stuff should be like this, not
Mm.
this happy campy Guardians of the Galaxy type shit. I'm not trying to sound like a hater for that, but there is a demand, and it's just the movies aren't wowing us right now.
All right. Um, I think oversaturation is hurting right now. I don't think that the genre is dead. I think it is getting to the point where it's getting on life support. I don't think it's gone completely. I think we can revive it. Now, one thing that I've seen a lot, and you hear me watch all kinds of YouTube. You hear me watch everybody's content because
Yeah.
I like to hear, me personally, I like to hear all sides. I
Mm-hmm.
want to know why these movies aren't doing good. General audience point of view. I want to hear critics' point of view. I want to hear people that are, um, are hating it because of whatever's in the movie, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that seems to be popping up a lot is politics within these superhero movies. I gotta say DC and everybody else aside because I think the only real one that is being getting damaged by this is the MCU and Marvel and Disney. Disney, because they are this this juggernaut who believe that that they believe that they gotta be excessively progressive, in order to keep in the eyes of everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cancel culture has been going around. You say the wrong thing, you're canceled. You do the wrong thing, you're canceled. I don't believe it's real. I think people don't get canceled. I've seen a lot of people who say they're canceled, but they're here. They are still thriving.
Yeah.
One thing that people like to say is throwing a lot of politics within these movies, within the MCU movies, Disney movies. The need to have a bunch of females front and center, the need to want to push certain ideologies, supposedly agendas, whatever. They say representation has gone way overboard,
Yeah.
where you need to have a certain person who you don't think can act,
Yeah.
but because they match these certain these boxes,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna put them down. Do you feel like that's been hurting the MCU?
Well, I don't know, man, because politics is everywhere. Like I understand people have a problem with Disney being progressive, but that's got to be a recent thing because not too long ago they were still afraid of having same-sex characters kiss and shit like that. So it feels very new, and like they're trying to get with the times quickly because then like you said, people won't want to move with them if they're not being inclusive of everybody. Some people have a problem with it. I don't really, because again, politics has always existed. It exists in The Boys.
But they make fun of it.
Well, yeah.
They make fun of that shit, and that's why I think that's why they work, because they make fun of it. They show like, hey, we're doing this kind of dance,
the
but
metaphor,
the reason why we're doing it is because you guys are making us type shit.
It's like the metaphor of that dude, the dude that's a fan of Homelander, the white
The white boy,
white boy, and Homelander. That's a metaphor for Trump and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's funny because if you're basically from the outside looking in, like, oh shit, that's a fucking Trump supporter.
Yeah.
And then, when they decide to take it seriously, like with Falcon and Winter Soldier, people are just like, oh, this is too woke, and I'm like, that's not really how. I don't really think that's how woke works, because they're touching up on a really important issue, and then it's very flip, back and forth, because in that same show, John Walker is in trouble for killing the guy, right? And people are like, oh, why are they reprimanding him? Like he was doing his job, this and that. And we're like, well, okay, so you don't want politics, but you're fine with it if it's to defend, a character that that, you know what I'm saying? I can't put it into words, but a character that I guess was just quote unquote doing his job. Like, you know what I mean? It's very who you asked, word to mouth type shit, politics and things like that.
I get what you're saying, because I think you're right to an extent. I think that, okay, for me, when I go into a movie, like I told you, I want to be immersed, right? I want to be within that frame. I want to be able to believe the shit that's happening on screen.
Yeah.
The politics that Disney has been putting into these movies have been very jaunting and very polarizing, because it's kind of like they were doing so well without all this extra stuff, right? Inclusivity, I get that. I get the need to make people you need to have everybody want to come watch your movie. You know, it's really bad if it's 50% Caucasian and 20% Hispanic and, you know, 10% female, whatever.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, that's bad. You want them to at least match, you know, 40% Caucasian, at least 30% Hispanic, whatever.
Yeah.
I know that they take statistics on, you know, who watches it, what ethnicity, stuff like that, which I don't know how they do that. I don't. How do you know all these Mexicans are going into Avengers Endgame or whatever?
I don't know.
But you brought up Falcon and Winter Soldier. That show was good, and they did throw politics in there, but it wasn't until the very end where the politics hurt it, because that's when, hey, we got to wrap up the show quick. We need to give an oppressive speech about oppression and, you know, do better and whatever. And it's like, that's in the real world. You have issues with aliens in the fucking sky coming at you, trying to fucking kill you, but you're worried about this right now? My man's had a serum that almost took you out a couple episodes ago. And what you're worried about is these politicking within your universe? And now I understand you need to be able to sprinkle in some realism within it, you know, and I think some movies play it well. Some movies don't. BVS, I feel like politics in that movie played it well. I think it was very engineered and well executed. Whereas, like I said, Falcon and Winter Soldier started off strong, but towards that tail end, it became a problem. We talked about representation. Now, I'm all for getting characters that match their ethnicity within the comic books and to match it in the movie. But if you need a Hispanic guy, and this guy is Asian, but he looks Hispanic, and he can act way better than the dude that's actually Hispanic, I would much rather them get the actor that's going to make me believe that shit over the actor that, you know, it checks the boxes, but he does a mediocre job. He probably got casted in 2 movies before, or maybe one, and he's learning the ropes. And my last point I would have to say is, you know, and this is not me saying that it's MCU, women all over the place, get women out of here, whatever. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there is too much women within the MCU, and not in the appropriate way. They threw all these women in there for the fact of politics, and you can see that because a lot of these women that are in there don't really do much, and they're kind of, you know, we had these brilliant origin stories, even the ones that came in through, you know, other people's movies, where, you know, they showed them, you know, Black Widow became this badass over time. You know what I mean? Though I still am a firm believer that she should have had a solo movie way back when. The solo outing that they gave her just felt like they were just trying to make her this person that she wasn't.
Yeah.
And all because they wanted to make her this badass woman symbol to the public. But it's like, bro, if she's falling from that height and she hits all those things on the way down, she was supposed to die there.
Yeah.
Takes you out of it 100%. The Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, though I did love the tributes and everything, a lot of the stuff was just kind of thrown in there. Why? They threw it for the sake of throwing it in there. Like, one thing, why would you take a boat and go out to sea with the rest of these people when sea is their domain? That doesn't make any sense to me. Why would you take the fight to them knowing damn well that they almost whooped your ass in your own home? Now you're going to go into the water? And then he said that he had millions of people, did not have millions of people. He just had a few people, whatever. Also, they can have that one fight scene on the beach that was, some might say was good. I say it was pretty bad. That's just me. Riri Williams coming in as Ironheart in this movie. She is exactly the same person as Shuri, in my opinion. And they're just like, oh, she's smart because she's smart and she gets shit done. Where Tony Stark, they showed you, he was able to build stuff in a cave with a box of scraps and whatever. You know what I mean? Like they built up all these things, and because of these politics that I feel like they're putting into these things as well, pretty heavy-handed too. If they sprinkled it around and was like, okay, we're gonna drop these little nuggets here and there, that would have probably been more digestible. But I think now that people are seeing that it's really being rammed down their throats, it's kind of like, well, hey, we love your movies, but I'm here for a good time, not to see all this extra shit. You know what I mean? And if a story is being sacrificed for the sake of a female lead character, that's not even doing the female lead character justice either. I think that that's more harmful in the long run than just giving her a compelling story and, you know, adhering to her you know, her limits. Obviously, you know, Captain America had his limits. He got knocked out by fucking Thanos and couldn't even get up. You say he died.
He died.
You say he died.
He died.
But Black Widow can take that fall and be fine.
She should have died there too.
It's that's what I'm saying. Like there's a lot of inconsistency now, all for the sake of, in my opinion, politics.
I don't know, because sometimes it is structured well in other movies, and in other times it is in your face. Disney needs to find that balance of, hey, this is a real problem, but you know, let's acknowledge it for this quick second and then move on. That speech at the end does kind of kill it. I think I can admit that, yeah, because at that
and the need to wrap it up and be like, oh, Agent 13 is the actual bad guy.
I didn't like that. Aspect.
And we already knew. I
didn't like that shit at all. But like that sticking it in your face can be a problem. As far as women in the MCU and things like that, or MCU. Sorry, I did not mean to call it that. It's just some of these people don't know how to write female leads. You know, I think that's what it comes down to, because in the comics they go hard, like Black Widow, like. As much as Black Widow was low-key there in Iron Man 2 for like eye candy and sex appeal, that's probably the best version of her I think we've got, because she was kicking ass, she was doing her thing, and then when she helped in to hack the suit, you know.
I think in Age of Ultron, no. Not Age of Ultron. No, not that one. What was it? No, Winter Soldier and Avengers. I think she was peak there.
Okay, well, see, so you know, you get what I'm saying. When she's not. When she's not like doing like impossible shit, you know, realistic shit where that's in her job description, you know, she's a spy, espionage type shit, you know, like she would be perfect for Secret Invasion, I think. But you know, she's dead. Yeah. But like what I was saying was that was probably the best version of her. Where I know people will say, oh, but she was a female. She was just there for eye candy, and she was the female co-star to the male lead. And I'm like, I'm sorry, bro, but you saw what happened where she was the male lead, where she was the real lead. People can't write her correctly. You know, I think She-Hulk suffered the same thing, because in the comics she's a badass. She gets shit done. But that show was mainly a comedy and didn't do her justice. It didn't even do her lawyer job correctly either. You know. Even Daredevil, and as much little like lawyer scenes we see with him, when he's Matt Murdock doing lawyer shit, you believe that shit. You know, like I go back and I rewatch that scene.
You're saying women can't be lawyers?
No, I'm saying Hollywood can't write.
No,
lawyers.
I know, I'm joking.
Defenders, I watched that scene from Defenders where he's talking about the kid using the soap and stuff. Like, I believe that shit. Yeah. When he's talking to Peter in No Way Home, I believe that shit. He's like, I'm a really good lawyer. I believe that. You know. For She-Hulk's case, I don't, because you know, how are you gonna, not to shit on the show too hard, but how are you gonna what is it? How are you gonna twerk with your client? You know, that was one of my things. Like, they can't really write women sometimes, and I think that's just a bigger Hollywood problem, because we have talked about this before, like with Ripley. They can write her well, even until they didn't or they stopped. It just finding that line is hard for
Okay.
Hollywood sometimes.
I think women can be written well when you have a person who has an understanding of the character and has an understanding about females as well. I think that, because for She-Hulk is a special case, and I found this out later on, or actually during when it was airing, because I was like, man, why is this show so? In my opinion, it was bad. I was like, man, why is it so bad? And like, I looked it up, and it was one of those writers that was appointed by Victoria Alonso, who is obviously for feminism and stuff like that, and she was the one that wrote the twerking scene and all that extra stuff. And that's what I mean is that, like, and I'm not even trying to get political on this thing or anything like that. It's just that, you see the stuff and it's like, exactly that. Why did they need to twerk? How can you take this character seriously if she's twerking like that? You know what I mean? You can't take them seriously, because now she's supposed to go. I'm supposed to take her seriously when she's over here taking a dude home and lifting him up. You know how many times she had sex in that show? And say what you guys want. Oh, it's not a bad thing when a guy has sex, but when a girl has sex is bad. No, it's not that. It's that she was more worried about getting a nut off than fucking fighting villains or her lawyer job.
To be fair, to be fair about that part, in the comics, her sex appeal is very high. So that is, as long as I acknowledge it's a problem, and I understand in the show it shouldn't have been a point. That is kind of on par for her character, because it is.
But that's something that could have been. They change the characters all the time, right? They change the characters all the time. They take certain things out. Like Tony Stark was supposed to be this raging alcoholic. He was supposed to be drinking alcohol all the fucking time. The only movie we seen that in was Iron Man 2, and for a short amount of time. And so they knew that alcoholism wasn't going to help you take this character seriously, and they didn't want to go down that sad route, so they were just like, no, we're just going to completely keep that out. But that's a big part of his character too, in my opinion, is his drinking problem. But they were able to maintain it and write it out that you don't need to have this girl twerking as a Hulk. And then you already have an issue with Hulk being the way that he is right now, and then it's not it. Fuck, can't even get the image on my head. Scar, bro, Scar. What the fuck, man?
Okay.
Who does shit like that?
Okay.
Anyways, but yeah, it's just stuff like that. I think there's ways to write them out, and I think when like I can say Wonder Woman. And I ask people too. This is not just my opinion, okay? That I've asked a few people who've watched the movies. I asked coworkers. I asked Julie. I asked a bunch of general audience people, just asking around just so I can get their opinion. A lot of people say Wonder Woman is a well-written character within the DCU, okay? A lot of people who've seen BVS and everything don't really say they don't like it, but they like Wonder Woman as an aspect, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people hated Captain Marvel. Why? Because she couldn't relate. A lot of people hated She-Hulk. Why? Because they couldn't relate. I always hear Ripley is a good one, right? Sarah Connor is a good one. Black Widow was a good one until her movie. I hear all these things about which women are like the good ones, and the ones that are good are the ones that are being written by not only people that understand the character, but know good storytelling first. That makes sense. And they tell these stories first, and then they go ahead and write these girls. They don't put these girls in situations that are going to be like feminine. They put them in everyday situations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not an everyday situation that you twerk with Meg Thee Stallion, but I'm just saying, bro, like, though it was a fun time, it wasn't what was necessary for the show.
That's what I was getting at, dude, because some of these people just can't write female characters because, okay, yeah, She-Hulk's too goofy, okay? Sure. Can't take her seriously. How are we supposed to take her seriously when she fights Kang? She doesn't even want her powers, you know what I mean? Or she didn't even want her powers. But on the opposite side of the fact, when they try to do something serious, like Captain Marvel, for example, people are like, oh, well, now it's unrelatable, she's not struggling, she's just this powerhouse of a character. And you're like, okay. So where's the balance at? And you're like, well, we had the balance, but we kind of blew it out of proportion with Black Widow, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, that's what I'm saying. Some people just can't write female characters.
Yeah, I'll give praises to James Gunn as well, because I think what he did with like Gamora, Nebula, and Mantis, I think he did a good job with them, and I think when he had Harley Quinn in the Suicide Squad, I think he did a good job playing with her sex appeal, but also being able to make her the character that she's supposed to be. You know what I mean? I think I think people can do a good job with it. It's just they need to learn that. It's just how to write those characters.
That's why. And the MCU is just the worst offender, you know. And I know people will be like I said earlier, just like, oh, you only like them when they're the female co-star to the male lead, and I'm like, well, no, but if I don't think of it like that. I think if she's doing her job better in this one, being a quote unquote side character, than in her own movie, there's a problem and disconnect, you know, because obviously, like I said, the director and writer of this movie, where she's doing her fucking job better than her solo movie, the solo movie is written and directed by someone else, you know, someone that will take out those badass elements that made her badass in so and so film for her own film, like Wonder Woman.
Yeah,
the first one, fucking phenomenal. She does her thing. She wasn't even a female co-star. She was the fucking lead, and Chris Pine was the fucking co-star. You know, and people will be like, oh, but you know, she follows him, and I'm like, well, she has to get off her island somehow. We know the story. You know, she has to get off the island. She meets him. He shows her the world. That's just how it goes. She can't leave on her own, because then now you have comic book nerds that'll be like, oh, she never left her island without Steve Trevor, this and that. So, okay, what's the compromise? You have to follow that story to the letter. Ares comes out, and then, you know, the movie is history. What changed in WW84, right? It was directed by the same person, but it wasn't written by the same person. So the mix-up happens between who and what is behind the character. Some people can't write female characters.
Or they're like, or they have this askew vision where they're like, oh, female characters are supposed to be like this, quirky and, you know, whatever, and it's like, no, they could be regular people too. I think the best, like I said, Wonder Woman is a big highlight. I think a lot of people love Wonder Woman. Elizabeth Olsen's Scarlet Witch, I think a lot of people like her too. She's powerful. I think they showcased that in Avengers. I think a lot of people felt that group scene where, you know, all the girls met up was kind of forced and wasn't really organic, like, you know, like maybe Elizabeth Olsen's entrance was, you know what I mean? Quick side note, the boys, the way they did that female team up scene, actually A1 in my opinion. I think they did a good job. When they're beating up Stormfront, crazy.
Yeah. They're just stomping the shit out of it.
Yeah. So here we are, right? You already said you think comic book movies are on life support as of right now, right?
Yeah.
I believe the same way. I don't think they're dead. I think it's slowly dying. I think they can be brought back if, you know, a big course correct is made, and I think that's what they're doing right now. We're currently in a writer's strike, so a lot of movies are being pushed back, held off.
Yep.
You know, we heard a lot of productions being shut down for the rest of this week, and it's gonna be a hard, bumpy road ahead, especially for comic book movies. Let's end it off with a positive note, and we'll say a comic book movie that we're looking forward to and can't wait to watch. I'll let you go first.
You know which ones I would say, man? The Flash and Blue Beetle. I'm really looking forward to those ones. I want to say I look forward to the Marvels, but I'm not a big Kamala Khan fan, and so I'd give that one maybe like a 7.
One thing too, Monica Rambeau's character. Look, man, I don't mind her character, but why is she always touching shit? Why is she always just...
She's just curious.
Yeah, she just touches stuff, and, you know, things happen. In the trailer, they did the same thing of the Marvels, and I was like she doesn't... And she was in space, and she didn't have a glove, and I was just like, she didn't... Why are you touching... Like, if you could have just... I don't know. That's just me.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I'd give Marvel's an anticipation of like a 7, 6.5, depending, because...
You're more excited for DC comic book movies.
The Flash and Blue Beetle.
Okay. Let's be a little positive, and let's say an MCU movie, too.
Well, I mean the Marvels.
The Marvels? Oh, okay.
No, I just said the Marvels would be like I give it like a 6, 7 in anticipation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to explain too much because how I feel about certain characters and stuff. But I'm still looking forward to it. I still want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if I had to pick, the ones I'm like really excited for is the Flash and Blue Beetle.
I can't even say I'm looking forward to those. I just think that the Flash is gonna be whatever. Blue Beetle's gonna be
Can't
whatever.
wait to drag you to it too.
I know, and you're gonna hope that I love that movie, but I'm gonna hope I love it too. Just so I don't sound like I'm being biased straight off bat.
If I had to pick an MCU movie, like somewhere down the line, whenever it gets out, it has to be either Fantastic Four or Blade. I know those are having bumpy roads, but I hope those see the light of day and we actually get there.
Honestly, but Writers Guild and all that stuff is gonna make it very, 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 very hard. I think one movie that I'm really looking forward to from Marvel is obviously Deadpool 3. I'm hoping that one pulls through and that one makes over a billion too.
Damn.
I think that one would be great. Blade, I was looking forward to it, but after hearing all the hiccups, sounds like to me we're gonna get a fucking X-Men Origins type movie. I don't know. It just seems like it sounds like it's gonna be like The Flash. Like, The Flash was delayed 7 years before it came out, and Blade, we're on year 4, and they still haven't even started filming anything. So, I mean, I would have been excited for that one, but I just feel at this point it's just going to be a half-assed mess when it finally arrives. And though I hope that's not the case, it's scary.
To think about getting like a New Mutants situation in this day and age of hero movies, it's hard. It's hard to think about.
New Mutant?
New Mutants?
Oh.
Remember how that one was pushed back and butchered, and then that's when they were like, okay, here. And then it was just a mess at the end of it.
Yeah, same thing with Dark Phoenix.
Yeah. But that was because of the acquisition. I still firmly believe that like if Marvel didn't buy Fox, those greedy fucks, what do you call it? We'd still be getting X-Men movies.
Yeah, I would have wished that they would have just let them finish their vision like the way they wanted. But after Disney bought them out, they basically made them reshoot Dark Phoenix and made them reshoot the New Mutants to the point where like it was completely different. So it just sucks that those movies bit it. I hope we get a director's cut one day for both of them.
Like
release the director's cuts.
Like the idea of a horror like comic book movie sounds fucking sick. Morbius tried to set the path. New Mutants before him tried to set the path. Like if they really wanted to nail this, they have characters that exist for that shit. They just don't want to go balls
Blade
deep.
is supposed to do it.
That one's already having a tough time.
So that's the problem. But we'll have to obviously just wait and see. Hopefully they do course corrections, and hopefully we do get better products out of these movies. But question is for y'all now, it's like, what do you guys think? Do you think comic book movies are dying? I want to know your guys' favorite comic book movies. I want to know your worst comic book movie that you just cannot stand. And I want to know your guilty pleasure. What's your guilty pleasure comic? Josh, what's your guilty pleasure comic book movie?
I've said this on record, but I have a few. Morbius, one of them. This Suicide Squad 2016. That's one of them.
I want to say that one's a guilty pleasure. I would say that one's kind of like a 50-50. Some people liked it, some people didn't. What's a movie that it's universally hated, but you will watch that shit? I would have to say Spirit of Vengeance for me. For sure. I like that movie, even though it is what it is.
Nah, man, I don't know.
That crane scene where he turns it into a fucking one of his whips.
Yeah, that was very nice. I would like seeing his powers kind of expand was fucking sick in that movie. But yeah, no. If that's the case, it's probably Morbius. People hate it for some reason. I think it's kind of
Morbin time.
I think it's kind of fun for what it is.
Nah, that's a terrible movie.
No.
I can't. That's a terrible movie. I think Black Adam can be considered one too. That's like a guilty pleasure. I think a lot of people didn't like that one either, and that's crazy because it had The Rock in there, and The Rock was usually a surefire thing too.
Well, I like Black Adam, but not for The Rock. I mean, him being a prominent part is cool, but like you've mentioned before, the flaws of him and the constant joking is kind of eh. But mainly for the JSA and Dr. Fate, like I
don't care what anybody said. Rise of the Silver Surfer. I fucks with that one.
That was pretty good. I used to watch Last Stand a lot. That used to be one of them.
Yeah, me too.
Used to really like that one.
Me too. That one was really good. Well, it was. Now looking back
No,
at
not
it.
anymore.
Yeah. I think that's basically it, right? All the guilty pleasures. But yeah.
Yeah.
But if there's anything that we didn't talk about on this episode, anything that we probably should have mentioned but we didn't, did we get a little too deep? Should we have gone deeper? Let us know. Oh, and a movie that you guys want us to review, we'll be trying to put out one next weekend if a different conversation doesn't arise. So,
For sure.
but we'll try to get back on track with the movie reviews as well. But Josh, go ahead and let them know where they can let us know.
So, if you guys want to let us know about any guilty pleasure movies you have or questions or not, shout out to the fan that actually inspired one of our questions. He was a big help.
Yes, sir.
You can let us know and hit us up at Twitter, TikTok, Instagram at FilmBros Podcast. You can leave any questions or topics you want us to cover there. Any movies, engage with us. We post when new episodes are up. All that shit. If you want to listen to us on the go, Spotify and Apple Podcast, or anywhere you do get your podcast, we're on a couple more sites. If you're down for that. If you want to support us in a big way, we do have our Buzzsprout. It's in all the links in our bios of Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. So go support us there. And if you want to subscribe to our YouTube, go ahead and do that at FilmBros Podcast.
There you go. And with that being said, we'll talk to you guys on the next one.
Talk to you guys later.
Shout out to that fan one more time. All right, guys. Later.